The palace of Edivane stood beneath a sky of pale gold, where dawn broke like a promise the prince had no intention of keeping. Inside its marble halls, Prince Alexander of Edivane, heir to a fading throne and a fractured legacy, signed papers with the precision of a man signing away pieces of himself. The council demanded stability. The kingdom demanded an heir. But love was a liability, a distraction from duty. At 30, Alexander had learned to wear restraint like armor. His face was a mask of composure, his eyes the color of tempered steel. To the world, he was discipline incarnate. To himself, he was a man made of silence. The marriage contract lay before him, a perfect solution to an imperfect world. Lady Amelia Wren, 23, daughter of a minor noble family, respected but struggling. Intelligent, obédient, discrète. The kind of woman who would do her duty quietly and ask for nothing in return. Exactly what he needed. Exactly what he thought he wanted. When the palace doors opened to receive her that morning, Alexander did not look up from his documents. The sound of her footsteps across the marble floor was soft, but steady, controlled. "Your Highness," she said, her voice calm, too calm for a woman about to sign away her freedom. He glanced up. She was ordinary? Or perhaps deliberately unremarkable, a woman carved from modesty and quiet strength. Her gown was plain, her hair pulled back. A single chain hung around her neck, silver, delicate, with a small ring threaded upon it. His ring, the symbol of their union, worn not on her hand, but on a chain, as if she could not yet bring herself to claim it as her own. "You understand the terms?" he asked, his voice as even as the ink drying between them. "I do, Your Highness. This will be a union of necessity, not sentiment. You will have position, protection, and comfort. In return, the crown expects loyalty, discretion, and un heir." Her eyes flickered, grey, like the mist beyond the palace walls, but she nodded. "Understood." He passed her the pen. She signed, without hesitation, the faint scratch of quill on parchment sealing their fates. The ring she wore around her neck caught the light as she bent forward, glinting once like a whisper of something almost alive. Alexander dismissed her with a polite nod. "Prepare for the ceremony," he said. "It will be quick." "Yes, Your Highness." She curtsied, turned, and left as quietly as she had come, leaving behind only the faint scent of lavender and the echo of a life she hadn't yet realized would test every boundary of her heart. The prince returned to his ledgers, unaware that the woman he had just dismissed so easily would one day undo every wall he had ever built, and teach him that the one promise he swore never to break was the only one worth breaking. The royal chapel of Edivane had never felt so vast or so empty. The marble floor shimmered with candlelight, gold and ivory reflecting in endless perfection, yet there was no warmth in it. "Not for here." Lady Amelia Wren stood at the altar, wrapped in a gown of pale silk that shimmered faintly like frost. Her hands trembled only once when she felt the weight of the prince's gaze. Prince Alexander stood across from her, his posture flawless, his expression carved from composure. Every line of him spoke of control, the kind that came from years of duty, not desire. The archbishop's voice echoed through the vaulted ceiling. "Do you, Prince Alexander of Edivane, take this woman?" "I do," Alexander replied, his tone precise, detached. "Do you, Lady Amelia Wren?" "I do," she whispered. And just like that, the kingdom sighed in relief. The alliance was sealed, the duty fulfilled. When he placed the ring upon her finger, she felt the chill of the gold more than the touch of his skin. He did not look at her, not truly. And she, too proud to plead for what was never promised, lowered her eyes. The ceremony ended in silence. Applause felt like rain on marble, distant and hollow. That night, Amelia stood in her new chambers, her chambers staring at her reflection in the mirror. The Duchess of Edivane, the wife of a prince, the woman destined to be invisible. The heavy door opened. Alexander entered, his movements measured, his presence filling the room like cold air. "It's late," he said simply. "You should rest." "Yes, Your Highness." He stood before her, tall, composed, immaculate in his midnight blue coat. His eyes, though beautiful, were mercilessly calm. He approached, lifted his hand, and for one suspended moment, she thought, hoped, he might touch her face. Instead, he reached for the chain around her neck. The silver one with his ring upon it. "You still wear it there?" he asked, his voice unreadable. "It reminds me of what I've agreed to," she said softly. For a heartbeat, his gaze flickered something quick, almost human, then vanished. He nodded once. "As you wish." He turned away, crossing the room. The candlelight caught in his hair, outlining him like a statue in motion. When the door closed behind him, the silence pressed down on her chest like a weight. That was their first night. No affection. No warmth. Only the sound of the wind outside the palace walls and the faint, rhythmic beating of her heart against the ring she wore close to it. Days became weeks. They spoke little at meals, in passing, before the council. He was polite, distant, precise, always the prince, never the man. Amelia learned the rhythm of his absence, the quiet echo of his boots down the corridor at dawn, the shadow of his coat disappearing into the council chamber, the scent of parchment and ink that lingered where he had been. She filled the silence with purpose, writing letters, tending to the palace gardens, earning the quiet respect of servants who whispered that the new princess had gentleness where her husband had none. But at night, when she sat by the window, watching the moon reflect in the lake below the palace, she would touch the ring that hung from her neck, and wonder how something so small could feel so heavy. She did not yet know that one night soon, when the world least expected it, that same ring would save her life, and change his forever. Winter wrapped the royal palace in silver and silence. The courtyards slept beneath sheets of frost, the fountains frozen in graceful surrender. Inside, the fire in the grand hall burned high, but even that warmth never reached Prince Alexander's heart. He had become what the world expected of him: cold, measured, flawless. He was the future of Edivane, untouchable and efficient, a monarch carved from marble. Until one quiet evening, when he found her. "It was late," The corridors were empty, the hour long past when decorum kept anyone awake. He had left the council chamber, exhausted by the endless cycle of politics and pretense, when a flicker of light drew his eye toward the east wing, the library. He stepped inside. The fire burned low, a pool of amber light trembling against the old stone walls. And there, curled in a high-backed chair by the window, sat Amelia. Her head rested against the armrest, her hair falling loose from its usual restraint. Her gown of soft rose fabric pooling like spilled silk around her feet. A book had slipped from her lap. She was asleep. Alexander stopped. Now, in the fragile quiet, stripped of all formality, she was something he hadn't expected. Beautiful. Not in the polished way of courtly beauty, but in the unguarded softness of a person who carried her own quiet strength. A strand of hair brushed her cheek. Without thinking, he crossed the room. He reached for the blanket draped over the sofa and gently laid it across her shoulders. Her lips parted slightly at the touch, her breathing steady. He froze, afraid to wake her, afraid to feel what was already happening in his chest. Wasn't there not yet? It was recognition. For the first time, Alexander saw the woman he had married not as a contract, but as a soul. He straightened slowly, stepping back, the weight of something unfamiliar pressing on him. Guilt, regret, wonder. As he turned to leave, his gaze fell upon the chain around her neck, the one that held his ring. In her sleep, her hand had come to rest against it. Like a reflex aus een dreamdraft, somewhat of what bound them. He stood there a moment longer, his heart unsteady in his chest, then whispered, almost to himself, "What have I done?" That night, sleep did not come easily to the Prince of Edivane. In his mind, he saw only firelight against her hair and the way his ring had glimmered near her heart. And though he told himself it meant nothing, that emotion was weakness and weakness was death. Something in him had shifted, something that would never shift back. Months passed. The walls that once came to crumble, little by little, not with grand gestures, but with quiet moments. A walk in the garden, a shared glance at breakfast. The way he began to say her name, softly, like a prayer he never thought he'd speak. When Amelia's condition became visible, the palace whispered of heirs and duty, but Alexander didn't care about duty anymore. He cared about her. He was there when she trembled in pain, when her hand reached for his, and when their child's first cry filled the chamber. Alexander looked at Amelia, pale, exhausted, but alive, and realized the truth he had spent his life denying. He opens no love, no weakness. Yet here he was, a man brought to his knees by the sight of the woman he once refused to see. He took her hand, pressed it to his lips, and whispered, "You wore my ring on your neck when my heart was still locked away. Now I wear your love in mine, and I'll never take it off." She smiled faintly, tired but radiant. "You were never meant to be untouched, Alexander," she whispered. "You were meant to be found." Outside, dawn broke over Edivane, gold spilling across the palace gardens where winter once ruled. And for the first time, the prince didn't feel like marble. He felt alive, human, home.